Does it live up to the hype as a launching pad for Phase 5 on our new Avengers-level threat, or is it merely another mediocre Marvel movie? I'm Ryan Riley for Sketchy Behavior, and this is my review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. As someone who is currently suffering from Marvel fatigue, can I just say, I enjoyed this movie. Now, one of the things that I love about this movie is the fact that 90 to 95% of it is spent in the quantum realm. Now, yes, that means a lot of CG, and sometimes the actors don't exactly gel well with the backgrounds and things like that. It's not the best CG. But if I had to choose, I would choose being in the alien environment as much as possible. And that's one of the things I like about this movie. Actually, I really kind of love about this movie is that 90 to 95% of the film is spent in the quantum realm. We start the film on Earth with Scott Lang walking us through where his life's at, and honestly, I think this is where the humor kind of works best in the movie for me. There was a lot of this stuff in the early section where they're on Earth that was very charming and kind of heartfelt and just fun and warm, and I think a lot of that had to do with it being mostly based around Paul Rudd just being great as Scott Lang, just being that heart of gold, just being an absolute lovable goofball. So in the movie, he's written a novel called Watch Out for the Little Guy. He was reading excerpts from it. It's played for laughs, but it is really cute and really charming. So I thought that brought a little bit of character and humor into the equation pretty early on. Now, my problem with the humor is that once we get to the quantum realm, it becomes a little more Marvel-y, I guess I want to say, but I do like the way we start this movie off. We establish where everyone's at. We don't waste too much time before getting directly into the story. The story is pretty simple. It's basically Cassie Lang has been working on a quantum mapping device because that's a thing teenagers can do in the basement in the MCU now. Now, in order to map the quantum realm, Cassie has to send a signal down, and the return signal gives them the data required to map the quantum realm. However, this is when Janet Van Dyne starts freaking out and is like, shut it down, right? Because she has been keeping a secret. She has not been telling anybody that there's an entire society, an entire civilization going on down in the quantum realm, and one of the people down there is not such a great guy. In fact, as we know, it's Kang. So of course, as the signal's being sent down, they shut it off and it doesn't matter. Portal opens up and it sucks the entire Lang family down into the quantum realm, and they're scattered about. They have to find each other and find a way out of the quantum realm. That pretty much is the basics of the story. Now, it's at this point of the movie where the humor really takes a nosedive for me because they introduce universal translators. When they first get down to the quantum realm, they can't understand anybody. So there's like alien languages being murmured about. It sounds alien, it feels weird, it feels like you're in a completely different realm. But then they introduce the universal translators, and suddenly it becomes like contemporary language. The way that the voiceovers are done, it just feels a little too modern day Earth. It stops feeling like aliens and it starts feeling like just actors doing voiceovers for like a cartoon or something. So this is where the humor starts to kind of take a dive for me. This is where some of the immersion gets lifted for me. As much as I like being in the quantum realm, I wish we allowed the quantum realm to remain as alien as possible while still being able to comprehend the plot that was progressing. Unfortunately, they decided to do it this way. I completely understand why they did. This is essentially still a kid's movie after all, but I really would have preferred them speaking their own languages. It's just an immersion thing for me, really. And as far as the humor is concerned, it's kind of 50-50 for me. I found myself chuckling quite a bit throughout the movie, but never quite as charmed by the humor as I was in, say, like the first 15 minutes of the movie. Now, while there is a lot of silly, stupid shit that happens in this movie, it's nowhere near the level of like Thor trying to have a menage a trois with his hammer and his axe. However, while we're talking about goofy, while we're talking about things that are silly and do not work, MODOK. I hated everything with MODOK. Not everything. So when he's introduced, just kind of comes out of the gate, just blowing shit up. He's got like buzzsaws whirling, fucking firing blasters everywhere. That is really cool. And he's got this pretty cool faceplate that makes him look kind of creepy. Then they lift the faceplate and they show what's going on underneath. And it's bad. And it's like you can't take your eyes off it, but you definitely don't want to be looking at it either. It just looked terrible. And they presented him as an absolute kind of just joke, and they try to give him like a character arc, and it doesn't work because you don't give a shit, or at least I didn't give a shit. I do not understand why MODOK was in this movie. That was something that for me, if I could strip any one element out of this movie completely, it would be MODOK and the mid-credits scene, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. On the positive side, I think some of the action is really fun to watch, but it's not anything that necessarily stuck with me other than maybe like the main event of Kang versus Ant-Man in the end, which we saw in the trailer. There's some stuff with Michelle Pfeiffer that was a standout for me. I thought those were really fun action sequences. She actually gets surprisingly a lot to do in this movie, which brings me to my favorite part of this film, the cast. Paul Rudd does everything you want Paul Rudd to do when you put him in your movie. He brings the charm, he brings the heart, he brings the humor, and he just brings an ability to connect with the audience, and you just get the audience rooting for him on his side almost effortlessly. Now, as for the rest of the cast, Michael Douglas doesn't have a lot to do in the film, but he is engaging and fun and funny when he shows up. Another character we don't do a whole lot with is Hope Van Dyne. Don't get me wrong, Evangeline Lilly's very kick-ass. She comes in when she's needed. She's very driven. She's looking for her family. She's good in the role, but they don't really give her much to do, especially not emotionally. The most emotional work they give her to do is her trying to connect with her mother. I don't remember her having much of an arc or a storyline to herself. Now that brings me to Kathryn Newton as Cassie, and she was okay. She was very hit or miss for me, so I thought she was very solid with any of the snarky, sarcastic kind of bits of humor. She looked fine doing the action stuff, but the problem for me comes when they try to get her to do anything emotional. It mostly falls flat for me. I don't know if that's her fault as the actor. I don't know if that's the director's fault for what they were telling her to do, but whatever was going on, it didn't work for me. And I felt she was mostly just good for the spunky stuff, but not necessarily any of the emotional stuff. And that now brings us to the MVPs of this film, and personally my favorite part or parts of the film entirely, Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan goddamn Majors. Now everybody's talking about how great Jonathan Majors is, and he is. He crushes it as Kang. He is so awesome. He was phenomenal in this movie. I thought Kang was great because he gives him so much emotion and pathos, and like you just feel so much going on behind Kang's eyes, and it's all because Jonathan's giving a great performance. And you've been hearing nothing about, even from bad reviews, that's what you've been hearing about this movie was Jonathan Majors. But what you haven't been hearing so much about, Michelle Pfeiffer, man, she kills it in this movie. Like, not only do they have her doing action stuff, now, the action sequences, I don't know if it's her or it's mostly just like a stunt double with a CGI face on. Regardless, it looked great. Her character in this movie, one, she gets a lot more to do than I thought she was gonna do. She does a lot of really good action work. She does a lot of good intensity work. She does a lot of good emotional work. There is a point in this movie where we are getting a flashback, and it is between Janet Van Dyne and Kang. These two performers are magnetic. Their chemistry together is phenomenal. The way those two actors played off of each other, that was my favorite part of the movie. I forgot I was watching a movie. I was just watching two incredible performers completely draw me into their drama. And I thought they were amazing. Honestly, I would watch an entire prequel just based on Janet Van Dyne and Kang's time in the quantum realm together, because that for me was the absolute best part of the movie, which maybe isn't, okay, maybe that's not the best sign for an MCU movie if someone's favorite part is dialogue, but it's also a compliment. I think the dialogue was really well written. I think the scenes were pretty well written, and I think their performances were the best part of the movie. So I just wanted to also really put an emphasis on how great Michelle Pfeiffer was in this movie, because as much love as Jonathan Majors is getting and absolutely deserves to get, I also think Michelle Pfeiffer deserves the same amount of respect and appreciation for the work she did in this film. Now, we're getting to the point of, I'm not going to go into the specifics of anything that happens in the end or anything like that. So look, there's no part of me that believes that Scott Lang's Ant-Man can last like 5 seconds versus Jonathan Majors' Kang. Like, it's just... It is not a fair game. It was still fun to watch, but the point being, I just, regardless of whatever the outcome may be, the fact that Scott Lang even survived like 5 seconds against this guy seems implausible to me, but whatever, it's just me. So when I said my two biggest problems with this movie were MODOK and the mid-credit scene, the mid-credit scene really doesn't work for me, and I'm not going to say what it is, but I will say that it sets up future storylines for where we should be heading in phase 5 and 6, and I am far less interested in that threat that was depicted in that way than I am in Jonathan Majors' variant of Kang that we watched in this film specifically. If we're following this Kang, if this is the main threat moving forward, then I'm kind of okay with the other threat elements that are introduced in the mid-credit scene, but I thought it was really goofy the way they handled it. I thought it was very cheesy. I thought it ultimately was kind of disrespectful to the work that had been done previously in the actual film itself. So I'm not really thrilled about that as a mid-credit scene, but I'm really nervous about where they're going in phase 5 and 6. If we're going to get more of a tone like we got from Jonathan Majors as Kang in this movie, or are we getting more of a tone like the mid-credits scene? Now, overall, do I like the movie? Absolutely. That's what I said starting this whole thing off. I really enjoyed this film. I don't love it, and there are parts that bothered me, as I said, and I think going back in, those parts that bothered me are going to become more problematic, especially certain parts like MODOK, which did have a decent amount of screen time, which already had me feeling like I was kind of checking my watch the first time around, so it's definitely going to have me kind of like phased out the second time around. But I still actually want to go see this a second time in theaters, which is more than I can say for a lot of the Phase 4 Marvel movies, to be honest. So for me, it's like, did I like it? Absolutely. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I think anybody who's looking for a fun popcorn flick, because that's what this was to me. It wasn't something that needed to be taken completely seriously, but it did have very serious elements that could mean good things for the future of the MCU. It introduced us to what felt like a very serious threat in this film, and I'm hoping remains to be a serious threat in one form or another moving forward. So yeah, I actually would recommend this. I know it's getting a lot of negative reviews. Honestly, I don't get it. But hey, to each their own. Everybody's allowed to like and dislike what they want. I just think it's a little crazy that this movie is getting so much hatred, because as someone who is getting tired of the Marvel machine, you know what? I really enjoyed it, and I'm probably going to go see it a second time while it's in theaters. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you on the critics' side? It's a disappointment. This is the end of Marvel. Personally, I think we've seen worse films from Marvel even recently, or at least in Phase 4. And you know what? I think this movie's a lot better than Ant-Man 2, so I don't even really know what the hell anybody's talking about, but whatever. Again, that's just my opinion. Jump down in the comments below. Let me know. If you disagree with me, that's okay, as long as you're polite. I have absolutely no problem with disagreements, right? That just means I get to take that information into my next viewing with me and maybe see the film from a different perspective. Anyway, I'm Ryan Riley for Sketchy Behavior. Thank you so much for watching my review. If you like this, do all the weird clickety button stuff down below, and until next time, keep it sketchy.